It's time for Recipe of the Day. It's the tender and juicy pork roast of your dreams, cooked in the slow cooker, so it's hands off and as easy as it is delicious. And yes, you can do carrots and potatoes in there too. And you get a gravy in the end as well. It's pretty perfect. Okay, so this recipe is for using the darker cuts of pork, the pork butt or the pork shoulder. And really, I am partial to the pork butt here because it doesn't have that like skin or rind on it that you usually get on the shoulder. When I get that cut of pork, I definitely want it in the oven so that that skin gets all crispy. That's the cracklings, you know? So go with the Boston butt for this, and it's going to be easier to carve if you have a boneless one, but the recipe doesn't change if yours is bone in. In case you have a pork loin, I will link in the show notes for this podcast episode to the slow cooker pork loin recipe. That is a little bit different. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your roast fits in your slow cooker. I would hate for you to get started on this and realize that too late. So just pull out your slow cooker and have a look and make sure it's going to fit in there. The recipe calls for a 4 to 6 pound boneless pork butt or shoulder, which should usually fit in a 7-quart slow cooker. Sometimes pork shoulders are a little bit tall, and in that case, your lid isn't going to close, and then it's perfectly fine to cut it into pieces, just like 2 pieces, so that you can fit it in there, okay? So once you know for sure that it's going to fit, you're going to season it up. Mix together 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, a teaspoon of black pepper, a half teaspoon of rubbed sage, and a half teaspoon of dried thyme, or really any seasonings you want to use. You can take this in different directions, right? It can go Tex-Mex, it can go Indian. Just change up the seasonings as long as you've got the salt. I think always the garlic powder too, and then anything else is going to work as long as you like those flavors. Then you rub that all over the pork roast. And I'll just say that mixing the seasonings together first does kind of save time and helps you be just a little bit cleaner about things. You mix up the seasonings, and then as you're going from the seasonings to the roast and kind of patting it on the roast, and then going back to the seasonings, you're not then touching all your spice containers or having to wash your hands in between all of that, right? So you could be using your hands to turn the roast over and then grab your seasonings from the mixture and add those in, and you're not worrying about that cross-contamination. So it speeds things up and it's safer. Now, you can sear this roast before you slow cook it. I'm going to tell you that it's optional though, and here's why. Okay, when you sear the roast first, you do get that nice caramelization and the flavor that comes from that. It is absolutely true, and it's going to look better too because it has that nice brown color. But if you're trying to throw everything into your slow cooker in the morning before heading to work, you don't want to be pulling out skillets and like pan frying something before you go, right? That is not convenient at all. So if you are in a hurry and you just want to throw this in there, you absolutely can. Season it, put it in the slow cooker in the way that I'm going to tell you to do in a second, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be delicious, juicy, and tender pork when you get home, no problem. If you want, you can actually take the roast out of the slow cooker, let it rest, and then put it under the broiler to get some nice browning on it later when you maybe have more time after work, but that's optional also. Okay, so if you're going to sear it, you're going to heat 2 tablespoons of cooking oil in a large skillet over medium-high heat. Then you're going to add that seasoned roast in there and cook until it's brown underneath, 3 or 4 minutes. Then flip and cook another side of it until it's brown underneath, and you just keep doing that until it's brown all over. While that's browning, to your slow cooker, you add 1 large onion that you've sliced and 4 cloves of garlic sliced as well. Then also add to the onions and garlic 1.5 cups of chicken stock. When your roast is finished searing, you take it to the slow cooker and nestle it down in there among the onions and the stock. And then if you want to have potatoes and carrots cooked alongside the roast in there, you absolutely can. I've put it as optional because not everybody wants that in this case. So what you're going to do if you want them is put 16 to 20 small red potatoes that you've halved, and you arrange those kind of around and over the roast depending on where they're going to fit. And then 8 large carrots that you've peeled and cut into big chunks, or about 20 baby carrots. Leave those whole, scatter those around and over the roast as well. Season that with salt and pepper so the veggies are getting some of that salt and pepper, and then those are going to cook there along with the roast. If you don't don't want to use those, don't add them. Nothing else changes. Put the lid on, and then you're cooking this until the roast is a minimum of 160 degrees Fahrenheit, but ideally 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And now these temperatures are not the minimum safe temperatures for pork. That is 145 degrees Fahrenheit actually. But we're taking it higher because here we're talking about that dark, juicy meat that really benefits from getting to a higher temperature and having all the like fat, cartilage, all the stuff kind of broken down in there, makes it juicy and tender, kind of like pulled pork. You know how pulled pork is always like really fully cooked all the way through and it's so juicy? That's why we do that. That's why we go to that temperature. If you're doing pork loin, which is that lean white meat, you do not want to take that this high. That is, I think, at most 145. If you're worried about it, you want a little higher. Some people go higher, but you can cook lean pork to 145 and that's going to be the best for it. And then this kind of pork, we want that to go higher. I want it to go to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to be 7 to 8 hours on low or 4 to 5 hours on high. Use an instant read thermometer to get a sense of what that temperature is. And when you know you're nice and high up there, then you use some tongs to transfer the roast and the veggies. If you put those in there, transfer those to a large plate and tent them with foil. And now we're making our gravy. So you want to skim off any fat from inside the slow cooker. You can just use a spoon to do that, or you can pour it into a gravy separator, whatever you want to do. And then once your fat is removed, you're going to get a small jar or a container with a tight fitting lid, and to that, you're adding a half cup of room temperature or cold chicken stock. You just don't want it to be warm because we're going to add some flour to it, and that's going to start cooking right away if that stock is warm. So you just want cold or room temperature, half a cup, and you're also adding 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour to that jar. Shake it really well. We'll put the lid on first, and then shake it really well until there are no lumps inside, and then pour that into the slow cooker with your juices that are in there. Stir it up, put the lid on, turn it to high, and cook until the gravy is thickened. It's going to be about 8 to 10 minutes. Then the roast will have rested for long enough and you can slice it and serve it with that gravy. And if you use the veggies, with those veggies. Now, see, that was so easy. It's just kind of going all in there, especially if you skip that searing step at the beginning and you've got that tender and juicy roast, a gravy, vegetables, potatoes. It is a perfect, easy dinner. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is December 23rd of 2024. If you want some more great roast recipes, definitely head to cookthestory.com, my website. We are known for having all kinds of delicious roasts, pork, beef, chicken, turkey. It is all there. Go to cookthestory.com and search for the roasts of your dreams. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookville.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.